Previously, on the Crazy Train.
We're moving. Off we go.
Fontaine's successful career in Hollywood comes to an abrupt end when he gets so sick he ends up at the Mayo Clinic.
The neurocardiogenic syncope was a symptom of a larger problem.
While recovering in Sacramento, the Judds get an unusual offer for a reality TV show about their large family.
This time it was a little different because we trusted Craig.
Unsure how to navigate the reality TV world, Hannah reaches out to her friend Alaina Huffman.
She had a lot of experience in front of the camera, and I trusted her.
Alaina recommends her husband John, and the Judds sign a contract.
We asked John, can we just do a one-year contract? And John said, no.
Fontaine thinks he's found a new career path.
He knew his stuff.
But when John turns down the reality TV show offer from Craig
Got really irritated.
I said, you know what, this.
The Judds start to question his business acumen.
John called himself an angel investor. It was literally his job to bring money to the table.
An elderly gentleman from church offers the Judd daughters new cell phones, but the phones quickly become a distraction.
My kids were spending all their time playing stupid games on the phone.
When Fontaine decides to get rid of the phones, the elderly gentleman shows up at the Judd home, clearly agitated.
As soon as I saw him at the door, I felt sick to my stomach. I was like, there's something wrong here.
With a visibly angry Eben Persists standing in her doorway demanding to see the phone, Hannah determined he somehow knew it was broken, and his behavior raised some troubling questions in Hannah's mind.
How does he know the phone is broken? Is he tracking the phones?
Hannah calmly told Eben the phone wasn't available. Superstar had lost her phone privilege and her phone had been taken away.
Eben kept demanding to see the phone. He said, I need to see it. And I asked, why? And he said, because I'm meeting with another child this afternoon, and I want to put apps on this child's phone. I want to see what apps I put on Superstar's phone so I can put the same apps on this other child's phone. So I said, oh, okay. And I went and I grabbed Ruby's phone because I knew it had all the same apps on it. I handed him Ruby's phone, and as soon as he realized it was Ruby's phone, he got very angry. And he said, no, I don't want to see this phone. I want to see Superstar's phone. I shrugged and I said, well, you can't, but you can look at this phone. It has all the same apps on it, so you should be able to get the information that you need.
Eben looked at the phone briefly, then stormed off.
As soon as he left, I went and got my husband. I said, honey, Eben Vischer knows you broke Superstar's phone. He knows it. How would he know that?
Look at my picture.
Yeah, that looks great.
The next day, Eben texted Fontaine, again requesting to see Superstar's phone. Could I use Superstar's iPhone for 10 minutes at 3:30? I dropped over yesterday to do this. I used Ruby's phone. However, there were two problems. One, I forgot to send myself the screenshots, and two, her much older phone has only a subset of the apps. It is not mandatory to do this, but it would help with the phone I'm currently setting up for an 8-year-old girl. The Judds knew that Ruby and Superstar had the exact same phones, so Eben's claim that Ruby's phone was older was not true. But they wondered why Eben did not just ask the Judds to send the screenshots. Why did he insist on seeing Superstar's phone?
It had gotten weird. We no longer felt comfortable having those phones in our home, and we wanted a clean break.
About to go up that cliff. Okay, Elias!
Really excited. Wow.
One day in early February, the Judds got an unexpected knock at the door. It was a CPS agent claiming an emergency visit, demanding to be let in. If the Judds refused, he threatened to bring the police.
Somebody had called CPS and told them that we had unsupervised toddlers playing in the street and that we didn't have a fence in our backyard. It was a total nonsense call. We had a fence. My kids were perfectly safe. You just couldn't see the fence from the street because it was made out of wire and it was back up towards the house.
The CPS agent wanted to know why Hannah's house was so clean.
We had just had job time, but he wanted to know why it was so clean, as if I had committed some sort of crime.
To the Judd's surprise, the agent contacted his supervisor and had her go over to the Judd home a few days later.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Barb.
Hi, Barb.
How are you?
Barb?
Call me Barb. It's Barbara.
She reassured the Judds the CPS worker was not trying to scare them on the previous visit.
He was astounded. Oh my God, she's got all these kids and look how clean the house is.
Barbara seemed friendly, but Hannah wasn't taking any chances and had collected letters from 3 separate neighbors who all happened to be outside the morning of the CPS report. They each stated that the Judd kids were not playing in the street, nor did they ever play in the street unsupervised. Hannah gave the letters to Barbara, but Barbara was skeptical.
It was just harassment, but because I had a large family, the CPS agent was sure it must be true. I was presumed guilty.
That the claim was that our kids were out in the street and that they're always playing in the street.
Yes.
Both of which
Are
were
not true.
blatantly false.
Hannah finally managed to convince Barbara the accusations were not true.
I said, look, if it was true that there were really baby toddlers playing in the street, what would you have done? You would have grabbed them, gotten them out of the street so they wouldn't get run over or hurt. And you would have stayed with them until you found their parents or some other adult. I was a little frustrated that a person would call in and say they were witnessing young children playing in the street and not intervene. So this person calling saying they were concerned and worried because there were toddlers in the street and they just left them there, that's nonsense. And all of a sudden the CPS worker was like, oh. I'm like, yeah, that's right, because this is a bogus call. It never happened.
Barbara agreed and said the charges would be dropped.
And that's exactly because we're going to do it unfounded. We're going to, the conclusion will be unfounded.
And can all this go in there?
Yes.
The Judds did not know who had made the false accusations, but they wanted the charges to be labeled as harassment.
I don't know if you can make charges against somebody making false claims, but
You
I
can.
don't want to be harassed.
But if this is a vindictive referral, then the vindictiveness is not going to go away.
Correct.
That's right.
So, yes, you will be targeted again.
Contrary to Barbara's assurance, the charges were not dropped, and the Judds later got a letter informing them that the charges were undecided instead of unfounded. After the visit, the Judds decided to build a privacy fence around their backyard. It was money they did not have, but they did not want to risk any more harassment from anonymous callers or CPS.
I did the math. 525 feet of fencing. That's 1/10 of a mile.
It would end up taking Fontaine all summer, but it would give the Judds privacy. After Eben's angry visit on their front porch, the Judds decided to take a closer look at Ruby's phone, and they realized Eben had opened all sorts of accounts on it: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Amazon, Google, and more. The problem was, Eben had put all the Judd kids' information onto the internet: their address, their names, ages, and photos. And the Judds were concerned.
What the heck was he thinking? Putting little kids' information out there on the internet? That's dangerous.
It was the opposite of what Fontaine and Hannah had signed up for. They wanted their kids to be safe. Instead, it appeared the phones were putting their children at risk.
Ruby!
Yes.
Let's go. Falcon! Boo-boo!
Fontaine also noticed an app Eben had installed that appeared to be tracking the Judd kids' whereabouts. It was called Life 360 and was designed primarily to enable friends and family members to share their location with each other.
Dun, da, da, da.
The Judds decided to delete the accounts, but since there were so many accounts opened, they did not know where to begin. They decided to start with Facebook and Gmail. Those were the big ones. They thought maybe the other accounts were somehow linked to those and would go away as well.
Oh, wow, that fills up the dining room, Dad.
It was late at night when Fontaine went to delete the accounts. 10 minutes later, he got a text from Eben Vischer.
He texted saying, "Oh, I see you've deleted your kids' accounts. Is there something wrong?" And I texted back and said, "No, I just think that it's a little too much for our kids at this age. We changed our minds on the whole social media thing."
Eben then asked for Superstar's phone back. He wanted to see it. He didn't ask for Ruby's phone, just Superstar's, which the Judds found odd. The next day, Fontaine discovered that Eben had reinstated the accounts Fontaine had just deleted. Eben was on their accounts as their administrator and had overridden the deletions, so Fontaine deleted the accounts again.
It was just weird. The whole situation had gotten weird.
In the middle of the Eben Vischer issue, another problem cropped up at church.
After church, I was just talking to friends, and my kids were playing with their friends and stuff. And I got this distinct impression in my mind, Hannah, this is not safe. You need to know where your kids are. And the next week, the same thing happened. I got this distinct impression in my mind, Hannah, this is not safe.
2 weeks later, there was a big announcement at church. Several of the congregations in the area were getting reorganized, and as part of that change, Hannah got called as the new youth leader, known as the primary president for her congregation. Hannah made some immediate changes to the way things were run. For example, she required all classes to have 2 teachers, not just one, and all parents were required to pick their kids up after class, instead of simply releasing the kids to roam the church unattended.
A couple years later, this actually became official church policy where kids had to be released directly to their parents. There had to be 2 teachers to every classroom, and only parents could take their own children to the bathroom.
Hannah's decisions were met with disdain, however, and many parents complained and demanded her release. The Judds couldn't help but wonder what type of parents would be upset about improved safety for children. One of the upset parents noticed her son was having troubled behavior during church and blamed it on Hannah.
So this mom sent a group email out to everybody in primary calling me out as being a bad primary president, which I thought was uncool because she had never talked to me about her concerns. But I thought, I'm the primary president. I'm going to put my feelings aside and I'm going to go talk to her and see what I can do to help her son.
Hannah assumed the son had ADHD because during singing time, he would be rolling on the floor and hiding under the chairs. He would routinely try to run out of the room. His behavior was disruptive and not age-appropriate. Hannah talked to the mother, asking if her son had any health issues.
She said, he only acts this way at church, and I think it's because of the way you're running the primary. It's too loud and too noisy, and it's stressing him out.
Hannah thought the mother's complaints were odd. There were 90 kids in the primary, ages 3 to 11. Of course it would get noisy at times.
I seriously doubted that her son only acted that way at church. But if that was true, why was he acting that way at church?
Hannah decided to talk to the boys' primary teachers individually to get a better perspective on what was going on. With a much smaller class size, perhaps behavior was different in the classroom. To Hannah's surprise, both teachers gave the same unsettling report.
They said he would crouch in the corner of the classroom, he would cover his face and frequently be crying, and he wouldn't look at anybody. And he was also constantly going and running and hiding in the men's bathroom.
Then that night, while making dinner, Hannah had a worrisome thought.
I was like, oh no, this kid's being abused by somebody. I didn't know who or how, but the thought was, that's what's going on here. But the problem was, I was pretty sure the mom didn't like me. So I went to the bishop and I said, hey, look, I'm worried about this kid. I'm actually worried he's getting abused. Can you look into it?
The bishop never responded. Hannah made changes to improve the reverence in the big meeting with all the kids and making church as safe as she could for all the children, especially the troubled little boy.
I did everything I could to help him. I made sure he had the best teachers who were very kind, very patient. Whatever the issue was, the teacher said he was starting to make progress, and so I'm like, okay, well, that's all I can do.
Yo, my name is John, and me and my wonderful wife, Alaina, we got 4 beautiful babies.
Around that time, John and Alaina brought their kids to visit the Judds in Sacramento.
You want to know why kids love to work? Because it helps them build confidence and prepare for the weird world.
The Judds had been working with families to improve their business products, and Hannah suggested making a TV show where the Judds would help people set up the program in their homes. But John had a different idea. He wanted the Judds to hire his friend to create a pilot for Hannah's idea, but he also wanted the Judds to finance an additional unrelated show featuring Vanilla Ice. To pay for the shows, John encouraged the Judds to mortgage their home.
I was getting kind of irritated. It seemed like John just wanted to spend my money. I had already given him tens of thousands of dollars, and I had nothing to show for it. John had already squandered the show from Pilgrim and then did it again with Big Table Media. I mean, they were going to pay us to do a show about us. And now we're out of money, and John wants us to pay someone to do a show? Oh, and mortgage my house to do it? I'm sorry, but no way.
When Fontaine expressed a concern about money, John promised to get him a job at Sony Pictures. All Fontaine needed to do was include John's contact information on Fontaine's demo reel.
I wasn't sure what the plan was there. John told me he could get me an editing gig over at Sony Pictures, but the opportunity never materialized. There was never an offer or an interview or anything.
Seated upon the stump, she was startled to find an elegantly dressed gentleman reading a newspaper.
The Judds decided they were just going to steer clear of Eben Vischer and his free cell phones, but there was a complication.
I had just gotten called as primary president at church, which meant I had a responsibility for all the children in our congregation ages 11 and under. And I learned that Eben Vischer had given phones to several of the children in the primary, with the understanding that it had been approved by and sanctioned by the stake president. Every time somebody's born into the family, I always feel like, okay, we gotta do things better because things just got harder. We gotta make this easier. We gotta simplify this. I was fairly certain that none of the parents were aware that their kids' names and addresses and phone numbers were now searchable on the internet. And I was also rather certain that none of the parents were aware that the phones and accounts were being monitored by someone other than themselves. Because of my position as primary president, and because I had information that the other parents didn't, I felt obligated to say something.
Hannah decided to go to the bishop with her concerns. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, each congregation is called a ward, and there are roughly 400 individuals per ward, and the presiding leader is called a bishop, and he has 2 counselors who help out. Then a group of wards make up a stake, which is presided over by a stake president, who also has 2 counselors who help out. The organization is similar to cities and counties. The wards would be cities and the stakes would be counties. Hannah wrote a short email to her bishop, Logan Shepherd.
Without mentioning any names, I just said I was worried about a man in our stake who was handing out phones to children and teens and monitoring the phones and possibly tracking the phones without the parents' knowledge.
Hannah thought that the church leaders should know about this behavior and put a stop to it.
Eben was a member of a bishopric in another congregation.
Go put this in the garbage. Okay. Go put this in the garbage. Go.
Plus, because he was authorized by the church, it would reflect badly on the church and on the other leaders who had sanctioned it. It was just a bad situation all around. The cell phone hobby thing was not a good idea, no matter how you diced it.
You're doing a fantastic. The kitchen has never been cleaner, Tia.
To Hannah's surprise, Bishop Shepherd was already aware and did not see anything wrong with what Eben was doing. Hannah pressed the issue in a follow-up email. I think this is a serious problem and will end very badly for all parties involved. Instead of referring Hannah to the stake president, Bishop Shepherd emailed back, vouching for Eben Vischer and his generosity. I have known Brother Vischer for many years, and I think there is a misunderstanding. If you feel he needs to stop, then call him or his bishop. Hannah was troubled by Bishop Shepherd's answer.
The cell phone thing was making me very uncomfortable. I was worried that kids were going to get hurt and our church was going to get in trouble.
The Judds had now been working with John for almost 2 years, but contrary to what John had promised, they were still not making money.
I was just watching our bank account, and every month we were losing money and not bringing money in. And I would tell John, hey man, our funds are running pretty low. If we don't make money by this summer, we're gonna be in trouble.
John did not seem to worry and had Fontaine make several trips to LA to promote John and to meet some of John's other clients. Then, just as the Judds were about to run out of money, John contacted them with the news they had been hoping for. John said he had found an investor who agreed to fund the Judds' business development. It had taken 2 full years, but the investment money was finally going to be coming.
We were so relieved. John had come through.
With funding secured, Hannah and Fontaine began focusing their energies on actually developing a product.
Up to that point, John's approach had been to secure financing. He said, after you get financing, only then do you start development. Well, we got the funding, so we were like, let's start developing.
The Judds began working with families directly and trying to find a simple way to teach them how to use the system.
I'm at work all day, and so when I do come home, my wife's exhausted.
Hannah had many ideas on tools parents could use to help run the home more efficiently, but John was dismissive.
He said, right now we want to focus on the chore training videos. The app ideas could come later.
A little while later, Fontaine noticed Eben had yet again reinstated Ruby and Superstar's online accounts.
Okay, here we are. We have discovered that Superstar's email account that we deleted back in February was saved and the password was changed. We deleted it. Eben Vischer texted us and said, oh, I can still save your account. And we're like, no. And he kept our child's account open against our wishes and changed the password.
When Fontaine deleted the accounts once again, he started getting texts and phone calls from Eben Vischer requesting to talk.
It was pretty constant. I had already told him, I don't want the accounts, but he kept calling. I finally started letting him just go to voicemail. Then one day, when I was traveling with my wife and family in the car, he called, and I told him, hey, you're on speaker, what's up? He said, no, Fontaine, I only want to talk to you in private. I don't want to talk to anybody else. And then he hung up. And I had no idea what he wanted. It just seemed a little intense.
Hannah kept running the cell phone situation through her mind.
The thing that was bothering me was that afternoon when he came over for Superstar's phone. If monitoring the phones was just an innocent thing and he was just tracking it to help the kids so they didn't lose it, then why was he lying to me at the door?
Good job, Falcon.
Saying, oh, I need to see what apps are on Superstar's phone so I can help this other child. Why didn't he just tell me he was tracking the phone and saw that it was dead and was worried that something had happened?
Just look at these gorgeous woods.
Why did he lie to me? What was he hiding? And why was he so angry? And why was he acting so weird and possessive of my children? Like somehow we were obligated to let him visit them all the time and let him manage them now that he had given them these phones.
Hannah wanted an outside opinion, so she mentioned the situation to an acquaintance who didn't live in the area or belong to the same church. Her response was very different from Bishop Shepherd's.
I knew that she did not know any of the people involved, so I ran the situation past her, and she goes, well, that's creepy. Handing out phones to kids and then tracking them without the parents' knowledge. Please tell me you called the police, right? Hannah, you have a responsibility to call the police. I said, yeah, but I don't know what the motives are behind the whole phone thing. I didn't want to cause a scene. I knew his family. I really adored his wife. If you make a call like that, it's on someone's record, even if they're innocent. That would hurt them, and I did not want that. And she said, yeah, but Hannah, that's not for you to decide.
Hannah later attended a funeral for a family member out in Georgia, where she quietly mentioned the situation to her uncle from Miami, and his response echoed that of the previous acquaintance.
That's just all kinds of wrong.
He was like, seriously, you don't know what his motives are? An old guy handing out cell phones to little girls? Do I have to spell that out for you? I don't know why you're talking to your church people. That's not their job. You need to call the police.
Hannah was torn on what to do.
My worry is that Eben was just a techie geek with OCD, not a predator. But the problem was, what if I was wrong? And my gut was telling me that something was up. If I knew this was going on, and I knew he was handing out phones, and it wasn't innocent, and he was tracking the phone without the parents' knowledge, and something happened, I would be the one responsible.
When Hannah returned from Georgia, she pulled Bishop Shepherd aside after a leadership meeting on Sunday.
I said, look, I know you respect Eben Bishop, but this thing with the cell phones, it's a problem, and I think I need to call the police. I explained the situation to him again. Eben was tracking the phones without the parents' knowledge, and his eyes got all wide, and he goes, oh, that's not okay.
A couple days later, Hannah got a text from Logan's wife, JD, saying she knew about the situation. Hannah approached Bishop Shepherd about JD's text.
I said, hey, your wife texted me this. Did you tell her about Eben? And he got all quiet and said, yeah, she wasn't supposed to say anything. Bishops are supposed to keep things confidential. They're not supposed to tell their wives or anybody else things that are shared with them in confidence. But Bishop Shepherd was a brand new bishop, and I kind of chalked it up to, okay, he goofed up. He's in the habit of telling his wife everything, and he's not used to, hey, being the bishop and, keeping things confidential. It wasn't okay, but it was understandable.
Okay, here comes Mahanrai. He's crawling.
In the summer of 2015, the Judds ran out of money and didn't have enough cash to pay their mortgage. However, they knew John Huffman had gotten investment money. They were just waiting for him to disperse the funds.
Once again, things were moving very slowly, and at that point we started to go into credit card debt. But I remember thinking, it's okay, the money's going to be here soon. We just have to be patient because this is all part of the process.
With money becoming increasingly tight, things started getting difficult in the Judd home. They were unable to use their own system of rewards for their children.
We didn't have any money. There was nothing for our kids to earn. And our home started falling into major disarray.
Why are you crying right now?
Because you made soccer ruined my day, so I couldn't go to soccer. That's why.
I started nagging, yelling, pleading, you name it. And I was like pulling my hair out. I could feel my blood pressure rising. And I thought, oh, so this is why people are like, I can't have more than 2 kids or 3 kids. I can see why. This is terrible.
Superstar, come here.
But then Fontaine had an idea.
I thought, okay, we don't have money to use as rewards, but what do we have? We had a great movie collection. Maybe we could use that.
The Judds started having their children earn virtual money instead of real money.
We did a little reframing of the point system. So if the kids earned $10 on their point chart that week, they could attend movie night. If they earned $15 worth of points, they would get popcorn as well. And more than that, they could invite a friend. It wasn't ideal, but it got our home functioning again. We laughed and said, well, this is the system for broke people.
At that point, the Judds did not have enough money for food. Hannah was using beans, wheat, and rice from the family's emergency supplies to feed the family. It didn't go over well.
It was pretty gross. I do not know how to cook beans very well, and neither do a lot of people on YouTube. People kept getting upset stomachs as I tried different recipes. It was nasty. I know that God heard my prayers because that year we kept having neighbors bring over produce from their garden and fruit from their trees, unsolicited. I've never had that many people bringing over produce from their yard. I even had one friend show up at my house with apples from her mom's tree and a box full of packages of ground beef and also a gas card.
Hannah's father also mailed the Judds a check to help out financially.
He did that without us even asking and without even knowing how bad our situation was because we hadn't told anybody at that point. Partially because we kept thinking, oh, it's going to resolve very soon. And partially because we didn't realize how bad it was.
After several months of debating, Hannah finally called the police about Eben Vischer. An officer arrived, and the Judds handed over the 2 phones from Eben. The officer asked to interview Ruby and Superstar.
She asked my 8-year-old daughter, so did the man touch you? And my 8-year-old daughter said, yeah, he put his hand here on my thigh while we were setting up the phone together. And my husband and I were shocked because we had no idea that was happening. We hadn't even thought to ask that question.
When he was showing me how to do something, he had his hand on my thigh.
Yeah. But he kept doing that, or was it just one time he just happened to touch
No, he would always do that.
And he just
There.
right up there? We were weirded out. The officer looked at us and goes, that's weird. And she goes, but it's not illegal.
The officer took the phones to give to a detective and left. Meanwhile, the Judds finally got a meeting with the stake president, Ned Telford, who happened to be a former DA himself. They informed him of the goings-on with the phones, and he concluded that the Judds might need to call the police.
He was surprised when we told him we already did.
Now swimming event number 11, 7-8 girls, 25-yard freestyle, heat 2.
Later, the Judds got a phone call from a police detective. He had gone through the phones and hadn't found any malware on them. The phones were clean. There was nothing more the detective could do. There would be no more investigation. But he had a word of warning.
He sternly told us, this is not a safe situation. I've been doing this job for a long time, and this is textbook grooming behavior.
And in lane 3, Tia Judd.
And just because there isn't malware on the phones, it doesn't mean there's not a problem.
And in lane 5, Falcon Judd.
The detective was also troubled that Eben had given the kids Snapchat accounts. The Judds didn't even know what Snapchat was.
He said, that's a major red flag. Snapchat is usually used by teens and by predators for sexting.
Snapchat's caused a stir in the country where it was developed.
It's been dubbed the sexting app.
It's being used by young people to send sexually explicit photos of themselves.
It's for when they don't want to get caught for doing something wrong. He said it was troubling that Eben was giving a child a Snapchat account and that he was teaching children how to use Snapchat.
The Judds later learned that Eben had gotten around Snapchat's age limitations by misrepresenting Superstar's birthday and claiming she was 25 years old. The detective warned the Judds to be careful, and for their kids to be careful. It was not a safe situation. The Judds decided they wanted nothing to do with the phones, so they let the police keep them. President Telford talked with the police detective as well, and afterwards decided to release Eben from his leadership calling at church.
I had really mixed feelings because I did not ask for Eben to be released. I didn't expect him to be released. What I wanted was more closure. I wanted a more thorough investigation because if Eben was innocent, it would be good to clear his name. But if he was doing something wrong, he really needed to stop. Instead, nothing really happened. The investigation never really took place, and it was just left as a big question mark, and there was a lot of weirdness. No one asked the real questions and got to the bottom of it. He was never cleared, and he was never convicted. It was just kind of left in limbo.
The Judds thought that was the end of the Eben Vischer situation, but they were sorely mistaken.
Keep going.
Well, you
As the new school year started, Fontaine got called as the early morning seminary teacher. In the church, seminary teachers are an unpaid assigned position requiring multiple hours per day, not unlike teaching a regular high school class. One young lady named Janie did not want to attend Fontaine's class and was trying to convince her parents to transfer her to her boyfriend's class across town. She would routinely ask Fontaine strange and unusual gospel questions and get him to answer, only to turn around and report to her parents that he was teaching weird topics in seminary.
I was just trying to teach the gospel and the scriptures, and some of the kids were just being stinkers, which is ironic because seminary was all about learning about being more like Jesus and being Christ-like.
Tia overheard Janie in the bathroom saying bad things about her dad as the seminary teacher, and it really upset her. So Hannah approached Janie's parents, but the conversation did not go well.
The mother was like, oh, well, that's because your husband is an awful teacher. I'm like, I knew that wasn't true, but I was mad. Not only was she completely unapologetic about her daughter's behavior, instead she started bragging to me about how she and the other parents were getting together and they were trying to get my husband released as seminary teacher.
I found out later that she was really mad that I was giving the kids tests and quizzes. But that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Janie caused enough of an uproar that Fontaine's oldest daughter, Tia, who was also in the class, called her out and told her to stop. Janie then turned her attention to Tia and began talking bad about her at school and at church. It was very hard on Tia, who was new to the area and the school.
She didn't know how to deal with it. I think she also couldn't understand why people from church would be mean. She started distancing herself from other members of the church, and she then began to tell her friends at school, I'm not Mormon anymore. And so then her friends responded by going, oh, well, that means you don't have to obey all those rules then, right?
This is funny, Linda. Huffman's sitting there with a hose on full blast.
And he's getting
In the fall of 2015, the Judds began to panic. They were completely out of money, and John Huffman still had not come up with the investment money he had promised. The Judds called him only for him to explain that he had been on vacation with his family on a private island.
We had been waiting 2.5 years for him to get investment money, and we had been using our own money and supporting the business ourselves that whole time. And now we were completely out of money. It was all gone. But instead of having any sense of urgency, he was off on vacation on a private island somewhere. We couldn't believe it.
John said there was nothing to worry about. He reminded the Judds that he and Alaina had agreed to personally invest in the Judds business if nothing else worked out. John also said that Alaina's friend Orlando Jones wanted to do a show about the Judds and their business. However, that never materialized.
Do it. Say it again.
Kids
love to work.
Despite John's assurances, the Judds were still worried. Fontaine and Hannah had both been applying for jobs, but they weren't getting interviews or calls back. Fontaine even asked if he could work at his dad's dental office, but Lynn did not have any jobs available. So the Judds began an application for a loan on their home. Fontaine asked his dad to help him out until the loan was funded.
I had gotten loans on my houses several times in years past. I was very familiar with the process and how it worked. I figured this time would be no different.
I like you.
I like you. I'm Batman.
Unfortunately for the Judds, inaccuracies in the appraisal caused it to come back extremely low, and the loan did not go through.
When I called the appraisal company to get it corrected, the owner threatened to sue me. It was so bizarre.
Jingle bell, 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 hey!
That Christmas was difficult. The Judds barely had money for food, so they resorted to buying gifts at the dollar store.
Royal, who gave you that umbrella? Who's that from?
Tia.
Well, you better give her a hug and a kiss.
Meanwhile, Huffman reported that over Christmas he had just closed a $16 million deal. Everything was going to work out. Then in January of 2016, Huffman put the Judds in contact with a director friend at Bain Capital, who spent some time talking with the Judds about their business.
We really liked some of his suggestions that he made, and again, it further instilled our confidence in John as our angel investor. Our business plan was finally coming together, and it seemed pretty hopeful.
Look at how excited
She's nervous. Did you see it? And not a minute too soon. We had been waiting for Huffman, trying to keep our cool, and we kept thinking that success was just around the corner.
We were seriously out of money. We couldn't buy food. Our credit cards were maxed out. We were broke.
After working with John Huffman for almost 3 years, the Judds had used up all their savings for the development of the business with the expectation that John would come up with investment money.
John was always bragging about how rich he was. His kids went to private school. He had a vacation home on some island somewhere. He was always flying around in private jets. He promised if he couldn't get other investors, he and Alaina personally would help us out.
We were in really bad shape financially, but John didn't seem concerned at all, which was really alarming. Either he was so sure it was going to work out or he didn't care. But then he was like super secretive about all the financial stuff and everything he had going on. We would call him and he'd always refuse to talk about money. It was like, I'm too rich to talk about that. It's below me. It's pennies to me.
Finally, Fontaine suggested Hannah call Alaina and ask for help. The Huffmans had offered to invest in the Judds company 6 months prior, and John had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal. They should have the money.
John had asked us to not bother Alaina ever. She did not like to talk about money. It distracted her from the show she was working on. It was a disruption.
The Judds decided to disregard John's request and instead approached Alaina directly for financial help. But instead of agreeing to help the Judds financially, Alaina told them some very bad news.
A chance meeting with a dairy farmer landed the Judds with an unexpected herd of 4 cows.
Well, even though we've been preparing for years and years for this moment, I'm still kind of shocked that there are 4 cows wandering around in my backyard.
The Judds get about 2 gallons of milk a day, which is the perfect amount for their size family. They drink most of it and are also learning to make butter.
How does it taste? Like butter?
Where you go?
For the world, I just wanna write
Don't
a song
die,
about a boy and a girl. Junkies on the corner always calling my name, and the kids on the corner playing ghetto games. When I saw you getting down, girl, I hope it was you. And when I look into your eyes, I knew it was true. I said, hey.
Top story tonight. More tree drama lands in the Judd home.
We got a knock at the door, and it was this guy from the city, was from the neighborhood, and he asked if we could have the wood. I joked with him, I'm like, but I'd be really upset if you dropped it on my roof. Haha.
He proceeds to take his chainsaw and start cutting the tree.
Next thing I know, he dropped it on my roof. I'm like, really? No way that just happened.
No, I'm not a highly metaphysical man, but I know when the stars are aligned, you can. Bump into a person in the middle of the road, look into their eyes and you suddenly know. Rocking in the dance hall, moving with you, dancing in and out in the middle of June. My mama told me don't lose you, cause the best luck I had was you. I said, hey, I'll be gone today, but I'll be...
Yep, I lost a tooth too.
What? Oh no. You gross.
the best luck I had was you. And I know one thing, that I love you.